Hello, health enthusiasts, and welcome to Rev Up Health, your go-to podcast for all things wellness. I'm Dr. Mark Hechler.
And I'm Tandi Hechler. Together, we're here to fuel your health journey with the best of functional medicine and holistic well-being.
Each episode will dive deep into topics that matter to your health, bringing you the latest insights, research, and inspiring stories.
So whether you're on a quest for vibrant health or just looking for daily health tips, we've got you covered.
So let's embark on this journey together and transform the way you live.
All right. Hello, and welcome. We're so happy to have you today, James.
My pleasure. It's always exciting to go out and come on these and, talk to your clients and the population generally in Kansas City and Missouri.
Right?
Yes.
Right. Just a matter of getting folks out there and getting them educated and letting them know what products are available for them and how they can all be helped.
Exactly.
So today we're going to start off talking about the KDMO FIT test, which is a food sensitivity test. Tell us a little bit about it and what it's used for.
Perfect. Well, I'm going to start up front, kind of giving you a quick definition of the difference between a sensitivity and an allergy, and I'll be honest to everyone who's listening, providers get this as wrong as you guys do. So it's not a way to kind of educate you guys on this. It's just it's one of those things that they get intermingled and interchanged. So we want to make sure that you're clear on it. So we're, as quite rightly pointed out there, we are looking at sensitivities, not allergies. They're both immunological responses. An allergy is instant, and think kind of prophylactic shock, think kind of kiddo eating peanut, an instant response. The sensitivities that we're after is looking at a more of a delayed response. So it's both an immunological response, but it's that delayed nature of up to 72 hours, which makes it much harder for, frankly, you, the patient, and the providers to work out what it is you might have consumed in that time scale, which leads to the symptoms that you present with when you come in, and see Dr. Mark and Tandi. So the idea is trying to work out that delayed nature, which kind of really makes it much harder versus the instant, because again, that's generally a cause and effect, whereas that delayed nature makes it really tough for the provider and you, the patient, to work out what it is that actually is leading to the symptoms that you present with when you come in to Revelation Health.
Right. Yeah. So, obviously those acute symptoms that, folks typically will know that, as soon as I eat that peanut or, I have that product and it's like instantly my lips or tongues or something swells, but this is a different situation. This is more of a, like you mentioned, kind of a long-term, kind of a chronic thing that creates trouble with the repeated use, essentially. So we can catch those things nicely. So.
Yeah. And exactly to that point, it's because it's instant, you generally know about it. When it's delayed, then that's why testing really makes more sense, because again, it is much harder to work out. So, we could all play the detective, but why not actually, rather than guess that, actually test for it and work out really as you, and I think the key thing is, what is it as you as an individual respond to? Because like all these things, that we all are built differently and we all respond differently. So again, it's worth understanding on an individual basis as we all kind of, take care of our own health, which foods on an individualized basis may well be leading to the symptoms that you present with when you come in and
right.
Get things checked.
Right. But what makes that KBMO a little bit different than some of the other sensitivity type tests?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a lot of the tests out there are measuring, I think without getting too scientific on everyone, is a thing called IgG, which is an immunoglobulin. But what it's doing is, in essence, it's telling you which foods you're exposed to. So it's telling you, okay, based off your diet, which foods are causing an IgG response. I love the gong in the background there.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's fine. It's good.
Sound effects.
James might be saying something useful here. So again, that's the IgG. What we're doing at the same time is we're looking at two pathways. So we look at IgG because we want to know what you're exposed to. But on top of that, we want to know which foods are actually leading to an inflammatory response. And so that's looking at what they call the innate immune system. And that's what we're measuring there. And so the idea is, by looking at these two pathways, what it does is it moves you on from having a long list of foods that you might be exposed to down to a much shorter list, which are actually causing an inflammatory response. So a good example of that is, there's a company called Everlywell out there that anyone who's kind of on Instagram, you'll have seen them. They're kind of mass marketing to everything. They're a great company, but they're looking at that IgG only. And so we ran one of those on the same day as we ran our food inflammation test. And what we saw is 25 plus foods on the Everlywell test, 5 on the FIT test. So when we talk about kind of scientific term, eliminating false positives, really in essence what we mean is identifying the key foods which are leading to that inflammation. And so on our test, that's what we do. And that's a really key difference, because a lot of patients, you guys are very, practiced and great practitioners. But if you show a list of 25 foods to a patient, they'll nod a lot, but we all know there's no way they can be compliant.
They got to eat something.
Exactly. You got to eat something. And it's like bread and water, oops, no bread. So the idea here is, how do we get them to the point that we can be in a position where we're really zeroing in the foods causing inflammation versus just exposure? And we've got a great provider in Ohio, and she says it best. She said, James, what I love about the FIT test is you're measuring the whole immune system versus just half of it, i.e. not just stopping at the exposure. You're going on to really look at which foods are causing that level of inflammation, which is really the key to all of these things, is getting to what they call the root cause of what's going on.
And I like also, to allude to that, I like the accuracy of how the testing works, because it breaks it down in different levels of severity. And so it kind of lets you know, okay, these are the ones that are really something, man, I really need to stay away from these guys. Or, do they fall into my 80-20 rule, where 20% of the time I can have something that maybe I really like, but I shouldn't have it. So those are the ones maybe have a little bit different color coding. So you might want to allude to maybe how that.
Yeah, and that's intentional. So it's what we tried to do is we wanted to make this something that every patient could really understand, because sometimes you see these reports, they're 30 pages long, and frankly, none of us are getting any. Our attention spans aren't getting any longer, and they're certainly getting shorter. So the idea was, let's try and color code it to make sure the patient as well as the busy provider can really understand what we're doing here. So the idea was to say red is bad, and that's a 4+, and then dark green is fine. So, and that's 0 on our scale. So to your point, how do we make it approachable and easy? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how whizzy and smart your test is, it is the only patented food test on the market. It was developed by the guy that invented the first rapid HIV diagnostic, but that is irrelevant if the patient isn't compliant. So for us, what we wanted to do is, how do we make it compliant? And that color coding is one of the key ways we do that, as well as, I know it's who knows what's happening from a climate change, but we wanted to cut down fewer trees. So it's a 3-page report to make sure for the patient and the provider, it's really easy to understand.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you may want to kind of describe how that testing occurs. How's the testing process occur?
Yeah, so it's really interesting that, what we do is it's a finger stick. So it's really easy to do in the office or at home. And if you choose to run it at home, it can be drop shipped to your house. And what we do is we'll put in 2 of the lancets. So you literally prick the side of your middle finger, and then you drop the blood onto a 5 blood spot card. You leave it an hour, it dries on the card. You stick it in a stamped addressed envelope. On the basis we want you to be able to find your mailbox, put it in the mailbox, and then we send the results back to the provider. But what we do with it when it hits the lab is, again, the lab is, from a quality standpoint, it's ISO registered. All our manufacturing is done under FDA guidelines, and we're inspected routinely by CLEAR as well. So it's one of those things where, feel good that all of these different agencies are coming in and saying hello on a regular basis. So again, they come in and they make sure we're doing exactly what we should be doing. But we do more and above and beyond that. So for example, we'll run tests per lot size that come in. So extra every 10,000 tests that we run. We'll run samples to make sure that in between each lab tech that we employ, that the results are the same. So again, one of the key things, as I mentioned, is our founder invented the first rapid HIV diagnostic. So we do everything through an infectious disease lens, for example. So we want to make sure this is highly accurate. That, if we're going to ask you, to stop drinking beer or coffee or eating wheat or whatever it might be, that we're really accurate with that result. So for example, we'll do 15 extra tests to make sure per patient, to make sure that we do what they call standard and control, make sure that those results are highly accurate. So when Dr. Mark says, look, looks like gluten and gluten's your problem, then we can be really confident and stand behind those results, let alone the fact, as I said, we've had clear, the FDA and ISO wandering through, and always nice to see those guys.
Yeah. And it's certainly, noticing that some of the way that some of the testing comes back, it's really quite interesting to see the levels of that. And it's, and these types of things are important to know from a long-term standpoint, because these things can lead to autoimmune disorders for folks with leaky gut processes. And there's a lot of that buzz these days too about leaky gut is the big word. And autoimmune diseases, that there's a lot that's just not really completely understood. But if we have another tool in our belt to try to look at that and try to be the investigators that we are, and it's certainly something that helps us to change lives for folks, in their gut health.
And I think that, you're absolutely right. And I think the key with this is what we're trying to do. If you think about, when you go and buy a new car, you go onto the lot, they sell you a car, and they tell you, look, make sure you put this specific oil or gas into your car. And think of your body as exactly the same. Your car is an engine, your body rather is an engine, and you want to know as an individual what's the best, oil and gas for your body. And so that's really where this test helps, because what it's trying to identify with this multiple pathway approach is to say, which foods are going to cause you inflammation that you need to avoid and eliminate, and which foods actually are going to aid your engine to make it work as effectively as possible. And so I think that's where this really helps. Now, you touched on it. That leaky gut is one of those areas where, some providers say, well, we don't believe in that. But the reality is what it's doing is it's working out what's going on from an immune health standpoint. And again, it's only taken a pandemic for us all to understand that immune health is important, but it is. And so the idea with this testing that we've developed here is we can look at which foods cause inflammation. And now what we've added to that to kind of make it really helpful for providers is we look at gut health to see, as you mentioned, Dr. Mark, which foods are actually, which elements are causing leaky gut. And so the great thing with this test, and it's the only one on the market that does it, we can work out, it's a classic chicken and egg. Which came first? Was it the leaky gut or was it the food sensitivity? And it doesn't really matter which one, because if it's leaky gut, you want to heal the gut. And if it's a food sensitivity, then you as a patient can eliminate that food from your diet. And then what you generally see is a reduction of the inflammation, which will generally very much tightly link with the symptoms that you present with when you come in, to see Dr. Mark.
Yeah. And now I guess we need to get into the different types of testing that you all do have, because I know there's some additional new ones that you guys have coming out with cardiovascular. But you may want to kind of touch on the different types and different levels of those types of tests. I know there's different numbers and what have you for that.
Yeah. So we have three different panels. We have the FIT22, the 132, and the 176. And those numbers, there's nothing magic behind them apart from to say that's the number of foods, colorings, and additives that we measure. And it's really key to measure those colorings and additives, because if you think of us as we all go about our daily lives, you'll see them in processed foods that we're all guilty of eating, unfortunately, increasingly in supplementation, as well as personal hygiene products. So think of your skin as the third barrier. And so again, you want to be aware of what you're putting on that. And so, we often hear stories about, when some of those markers are elevated, things like benzoic acid, you'll find that in washing powder. You'll find that in shampoos. So again, it's really critical to look at those colorings and additives as well. So to your point, it's those three different panels. The 176 is the biggest one, the 132, and then the 22. The good news is the 132 and the 176 includes our gut barrier panel. So it gives you a way of looking, as we were talking about that leaky gut, or food inflammation at the same time. So it's a really powerful way of trying to work out what might be going on from an immune health standpoint versus which foods, like we said, on an individualized basis are causing an inflammation. And the one other thing I'll say is I have yet to find a patient or anyone I talk to casually to say, let me tell you what my triglyceride levels are. My cholesterol's really high. I'm really proud of that. However, people really love to talk about this test result because there's no judgment attached to it. So it just shows that you're going the extra mile as an individual. You're going to say, look, I want to find out, am I sensitive to dairy? I think I am, but I'm not sure. Or is it wheat? Is it eggs? Or is it some of these colorings and additives may well be leading to the issues I'm seeing? So I think from a patient standpoint, really feel good about if you go ahead and get this test done, because you're going the extra mile to make sure you're looking at your immune health and you're looking at what might be going on from which foods are causing you an inflammation. And as we all know with heart disease isn't based on what you did yesterday. It's over what you did over the last 20 years. So again, the sooner you can look at these things as a preventative way of making sure you're taking care of yourself, really the better. And that's the great thing about, the guys, Dr. Mark and Tandi, they are doing that preventative work for you. And so getting these tests done is really critical in terms of how you age. So you want to age healthily and to make sure you can live as long an active life as these guys are doing as well.
Yeah. I mean, I just can't imagine anybody being out there that, number one, wouldn't want to know this information from a general health standpoint if you have any interest in promoting your own health. But, just about anybody that has an autoimmune problem, I mean, this is kind of a key to really getting to the bottom of understanding a lot of what can really flare those things up for them. So, And
it doesn't just stop autoimmune disease. I mean, if you think about it, with this test, you're looking at the root cause of inflammation. And inflammation is basically the backbone, unfortunately, of every disease state. Is it migraines? Is it arthritis? Is it autism? All these things, the underlying cause of it, one of them certainly is inflammation. And so that's why it's so critical to get yourself tested, because, again, if you've got joint pain, you know what that is? That's inflammation.
Right.
Skin-related issues, it's inflammation. So it's your body's natural mechanism telling you what might be going on with yourself. So again, the one thing that we all do, is we all consume at least 3 times a day. So again, why don't you work out which foods are good for you or bad for you? Good and bad, obviously, don't want to kind of cause too much drama there, but we want to try and look at, which foods are going to cause you inflammation and which ones aren't. And that's where I think this really helps, kind of helping getting to the root cause versus the symptoms, which obviously is the issue with a lot of the kind of practitioners today. Yeah.
I guess we may want to touch on also, what about how often should we retest? Let's touch on that.
Yeah. And again, this is an unusual thing for a guy who owns a testing lab to tell you. But with the foods test, generally what we find, people run the test, they identify the foods, they're good to go. So again, don't retest. And everyone's going, what? The guy who runs the test lab said don't retest? No, what we're actually saying is look at the gut barrier, because again, what we want to do is heal the gut. The reason we say that is, again, I'm sure we think we're all progressing in some regards, but, back in the Greek times, they said all disease begins in the gut. So here, what we're trying to do, let's adjust the gut, and frankly, let's heal the gut. And I think what we see is if there are markers that are elevated on our gut barrier panel, we suggest 6 months after you've run the test, then retest for that. Because again, much smaller test, much lower price. So again, we want to make sure we encourage people to make sure that they feel good that they actually healed the gut. Because that's one of those things that we really want to make sure going forward that immune health side of your body is doing well by making sure that your gut is healed. And if it's not, then again, there's other testing you can go on to do that. And it's funny, I was at another trade show this weekend, and a lot of the providers were telling me, well, we think we should do stool testing. And I said to them, how frequently, what's the compliance like for stool testing? They're like, yeah, fair point, James, not very good. So, and again, nothing against stool testing, but the reality is this is a finger stick. It's really easy to do, and we give you a lot of information around the inflammation as well as that immune health just with a prick of your finger. And again, that's a lot easier to do. And then again, if after those results you still believe you need to kind of go on to that, fair play. Go and do that as well.
Right.
Yeah. I would like to just mention too, I really love the food plans that you send as part of the test too. So once you get your results, then sometimes it takes a couple days, but not too long after you get that food plan that kind of gives you some ideas of how to cut those things out and still, eat well.
And that's intentional. We spent a lot of money investing in compliance tools because, as we said up front, if the patients aren't compliant, then we're not wasting our time. But again, we're not going to have the maximum benefit they could do from the investment they're making in the test and the time they spend with you. So what we want to do is make it approachable so they understand. And that's why the report is short, color-coded. So again, you don't have to be a PhD to understand it. Now, the good news is a PhD invented it, but we wanted to make sure that, you don't have to be a PhD to understand the report. And to your point, in the meal plan, the number of providers I talk to will go, oh my gosh, they'll get patient will get the report back, oh my gosh, what can I eat? So the good news is we give them a direction of what they can eat. And again, the other nice thing is we put that on a phone app. So again, everyone may be different, and we have tests running all around the world in different countries. One of the things everyone has in common is that everyone's got a smartphone these days. So by putting it on the phone, when you're out for dinner, you can check which foods, Dr. Mark said you shouldn't be eating. Your meal plan's there. So again, if you're grocery shopping, you've got that with you at the same time. And what we found is for all the practices out there, this is a great marketing tool, because people love to share this around with their friends and family, because as I said, no judgment attached to it, almost a badge of honor, I would argue, versus a judgment, because again, you feel good that you've gone the extra mile to make sure that, you're taking care of your health.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, it's a very affordable testing. We've found out that a lot of people can get the testing done, which makes it nice too. It's easier to get a lot of folks to really see what's going on inside their gut and their own general inflammatory health status. So,
yeah. And again, I think that was intentional. That's why we've got the 3 bands of testing, the 22, the 132 and the 176. We're trying to make sure it's affordable for all versus testing the 1%. The only 1% that we talk about is the 1% of providers who understand the importance of nutrition. And so again, that's our 1%, is we want to try and make that 1%, 2%, 5%, 10%. So again, it's unfortunately legendary, the number of physicians who after 8 years, they've done one 40-hour course on nutrition, which is crazy to me. But anyway, that's a different subject. So, but the point is, what we want to do is make sure that this is available to as many people as possible, working with, amazing providers like yourself who understand the importance of this functional medicine, holistic approach, looking at everything in the round versus, going, well, I'm going to go to my gastro guy, I'm going to go to my dermatologist. It's a nightmare. So again, the idea is it's joined up. And, one of the things that we added was a cardiovascular test. So I'll quickly touch on that, because cardiovascular health, inflammation, and gut health are all linked together, because a lot of the markers are interchangeable. And so what we looked at is like, if you go and see Dr. Mark, he'll explain how all these things are interrelated. They're not separate silos. And so when we looked at cardiovascular health, it's kind of disappointing to hear the standard lipid profile that all of us, if we go in and get a medical or anything done, they'll just test for that. They call it standard of care, and I have to be careful there because we'll get into trouble. But the standard of care basically means 50% of patients who have a heart attack have a normal lipid profile the day of that heart attack. So I would argue that's not a great standard of care, but it's a standard of care. So what we wanted to do was add a number of markers to that, which would make it way more robust to give you some predictors of what's going on. So we added a thing called ApoB, which internationally around the world is the number one indicator of cardiovascular health. And so a lot of people run that. Unfortunately, it's only 5% of the US population have had that run. So again, go in and see these guys, get that marker run on you, because again, that'll really help you in terms of, as we talked about, that 20 years of what you've been doing before you come in and see these guys. Right. So again, the idea is let's try and identify that up front and give you some pathways forward. The other one is, again, this sounds really nerdy, but my favorite marker of all time is a thing called Lp(a). Lp(a) is a genetic marker and is present in 1 in 3 of the population. So a lot of people talk about these genetic tests and say, well, I'm 1% Icelandic and whatever it might be. It's only 1 or 2% of the world, whereas this is 1 in 3. So 30% of the population are walking around with Lp(a). The significance of it is basically what it means is it increases the plaque activity in your system. So plaque is really bad from any cardiovascular perspective. That marker alone, if you go in and that's positive, these guys can dramatically change your outcomes from a cardiovascular health standpoint. So those are some of the things that we've added onto that panel to give you guys a really, really good way of working out what is your kind of cardiac risk profile. rather than waiting to be one of the 50% who actually didn't have a normal lipid profile on the day of a heart attack. So what we want to do, again, is all about prevention and giving you the tools and some of those markers that will have a dramatic impact on how you live your next 20 to 30 years on this planet.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've seen patients over 30 years of practice that come in with rashes or, congestion. I mean, trained in a traditional ear, nose, and throat practice setting, a lot of people that just have a lot of chronic inflammatory process which occur. And I know that, these skin rashes, this eczema, that people have, or even their chronic sinus disease, or even their allergies in general, these things are just aggravated by a chronic inflammatory process. And this is just an extra tool that we can use to help kind of calm that down for folks.
Exactly. So it's one of those things. We're not saying it's going to cure anything, but what it is going to do is going to identify that inflammation. And to your point, it's right. Like it's one of the parts. It's stress. It's all these other things. But it is something that we all do, and it's not something that's optional. We all have to eat. So let's at least work out on an individualized basis, whatever we're eating is actually doing us good, not bad. And so I think that's the key with this. Let's try and keep that inflammatory burden down, which is hard enough on all of us as we go about our daily lives anyway. But if you can do it and work it out as an individual, then you're so much better off in terms of than not doing it, for sure.
Right.
That's absolutely true. And I think this is just another thing that we can do in this new style of medicine where we're empowering our patients by giving them the information to make good choices for themselves.
Yeah. And again, I think it can be frustrating or certainly not necessarily the most positive experience if you've had if you've spent a long time in whatever the wrong healthcare outcome is for you as an individual as you're trying to improve your healthcare journey. If you go and they just kind of bash you over the head and go, oh my gosh, you're overweight, or, you've got this, it may not be down to you. It may be, look, if we can identify some of these things, we can help you lose weight, or we can help you, adjust some of these things based simply on what you're consuming. So again, we're not saying don't eat anything. We're just saying, why don't we work out what it is for you as an individual? And I think that power is amazing to see how it really transforms people's health and then in turn lives, which I think is a wonderful thing that, you guys do on a daily basis. And, we get to hear secondhand from you guys when we catch up with you. So it's one of those great privileges for me and everyone who works here at KBMO. And to give you an idea of why it's so personal to me, KBMO stands for K is my wife, Catherine, B is my son, Ben, M is my son, Max. And we always say we save the best to last. O is Olivia, my daughter. So again, it means that much to me that I've named it after my wife and 3 kids. So again, it's important to us that everything we do is making sure we try and do the best possible thing for our providers. And we've got some wonderful ones out there. It's a privilege to be on this show today, as well as their patient population as well.
Yeah. Well, Jays, we really appreciate it. I think you've given us a lot of information to think about. And, I hope that we can spread the word. And, I just want to let everybody know that this is the kit that you'll get, for some of the products and some of the services that you guys offer. And certainly it's one of those things where I think in today's new age of medicine and trying to create and promote health, it's nice to have control. It's nice to have control over what we can do instead of just taking a medication. Let's look and see a reason why. Let's get to that root cause of why we're in this situation. So. But we certainly appreciate you taking your time today to meet with us and discuss this topic. So
wonderful.
But
thank you both. And again, anyone who has the privilege of working with these guys, you're in great shape. And again, it's what a privilege to kind of get to providers now who really, to your point, are asking that question why. I mean, that's a great question. That if you go to 100, standard docs, none of them are going to ask you that. So It's a great step forward in terms of working with these guys and the type of tools that they've got access to, which again is, because these guys are out there banging the streets and they're out there at these trade shows that I have to attend as well, looking for the next latest, greatest thing. And so that's an amazing thing that they're doing on your behalf.
Yeah. Well, we sure do appreciate it. Thanks again, Jim.
My pleasure. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Rev Up Health. We hope you're leaving with some valuable insights to supercharge your health journey.
Don't forget to follow or subscribe to Rev Up Health wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a rating and review.
Have a topic you want us to explore? Reach out to us on social media channels. We love hearing from our wellness community.
Until next time, keep thriving, and remember, your journey to health is a journey to a better you.
Stay well, and we'll connect with you again soon. This is Tandi.
And this is Dr. Mark, signing off from Rev Up Health. Take care.
The information provided in this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. The content is designed to support, not replace, the relationship that exists between a patient and their healthcare provider. Always consult with a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your healthcare regimen, including diet, exercise, or treatment plans. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Revelation Health and Wellbeing.